Welcome everyone to the LOSD Cares Workshop, Substance Use and Prevention, a talk to have with every child. My name is Mary Kay Larson. I'm the Director of Communications for the school district, and it's my pleasure and honor to be part of the LOSD Cares team with our counselors and social workers and school psych. Today, we have an hour together. We are recording the session, so it will be available online if you want to refer back to it or share it with friends. In a moment, we're going to turn it over to our presenter. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are a webinar, so you can see us, but we can't see you, so you're private. But you do have the ability to submit questions, and there will be time to ask your questions. And I believe we also have a poll as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany, our school counselor at Hallinan.
Hi, everyone. We're so grateful, truly, all of LOSD Cares and Wellness team that you took time out of your day to join us. And we're also grateful to partner with Brian McCready. Brian is nearby with the Clackamas County Prevention Coalition, and he has a huge heart for empowering students and families and systems with supporting healthy conversations and prevention, specifically with substance use. And so, Brian, we're grateful for your time today and to hear what you have to share with us.
Thank you, Brittany. Good morning, everyone. As was mentioned, my name is Brian McCready, and I work for Clackamas County Children, Family, and Community Connections. I've been with the county 11 years. I've been doing prevention work for about 20 years now. Before that, I was up in Washington State, Cowlitz County for about 10 years. And prevention has changed a lot over the last 20 years. A lot of different ways to help youth and families support, and a lot of new drugs and potency has happened over the last 20 years as well. There's a lot of things to navigate as a parent these days, and hopefully today we can learn a little more about that and hopefully have some dialogue as well. I'm married to my wife, who is an instructor in Vancouver at a Midland High School there. I have 3 grown daughters and 4 grandsons, soon to be 5 grandsons in August. So it kind of swung from one end of the pendulum to the other there. All righty, I will start and share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that? So we're going to talk about conversations, and what I thought when I thought about, well, how do we frame up conversations with our youth? And my thought was, well, let's start what we call kind of upstream or in the roots, just conversations in general with our youth. So I thought that's what would be a good place to kind of kick this off. Just also, this is from research, it's also from raising 3 daughters and getting them through the schools and out into the world. So I think connecting regularly, focusing on their strengths. You know, we live in a really busy world, and oftentimes in family life, there's just not a lot of margin. And oftentimes with technology and phones and social media and everything going on, we don't have enough time to connect with our youth, our children. And so I think, you know, to start with is just to build that in regular time. And maybe it's driving back and forth to soccer practice or basketball practice, or just being really aware of, okay, this is time we have together. How can I use it to connect with my child? I think that's really just being intentional in that way. And then when we just, my personal experience, just being transparent. I think being honest about past experiences with drug and alcohol, I think sometimes people think, well, we don't want them to know about that. My experience, honestly, was positive with my daughters to share, really being honest about, yes, I did use drug and alcohol during late in high school and into the first few years of college, and I regret it. I wasted time, money, resources, and definitely lost focus of what I really wanted to do as an adult. So I think being honest about your past experiences is a good thing. Also, acknowledge peer pressure when your youth shares. And I think that's another thing, is just to be cognizant of that. Peer pressure is real. I do presentations to freshmen throughout the county, and one of the things, sometimes they don't want to admit that they feel peer pressure because they want to think that they have complete control over all their decisions and they're not influenced. But generally, once we get to know them a little bit, we can understand, yeah, there is peer pressure. And it comes from a lot of different areas: social media, pressure to fit in with some sort of personality or performer that they admire, seeing what they do and wanting to model that. And also it can be just pressure from peers. You know, a lot of times what I've experienced is when those students transition into middle school and then they transition again into high school, those are vulnerable times for a lot of these young people, because they're trying to figure out, what's my place in this world? Where do I fit in this new environment? And one of the things that we do is really try to explain to them, and I'll talk further about this as we get into the school presentations, is from all the research, all the data that we collect throughout Clackamas County, while we are concerned about youth use, the majority of youth are not using, they are not vaping, using alcohol or marijuana. So that is what we, across the board, most don't use. I statements. Oops. I statements. And that's just a way, it's one of the things that we do with our program called Strengthening Families. Many of you may have heard of I statements. They're also a good tool to use when you're frustrated with your youth. And again, the best thing to do is, you're really feeling frustrated, is to kind of humble yourselves and take a time out and step back from that. Maybe, you know, you're pretty upset and you realize it, and then you just take some time to go off by yourself, walk, whatever, before you deal with it. But then again, I statements start with, you know, how I feel. I feel frustrated when you didn't take out when you didn't do the dishes like you were supposed to. Now that I'm home, the sink's full of dirty dishes. I want you to do the dishes right now. It's just, it's basically 3 really clear points, no consequence at that time, just, this is how I'm feeling because you did this, and this is what I want you to do. So that's basically I statements broken down into a kind of snapshot. Another thing is, find out what is the best way to talk to each child. Now, I have 3 daughters, and 2 of them were more like, let's go have coffee. Let's go to Dairy Queen and have ice cream, and face-to-face like this. My youngest daughter, she was more into, let's go play soccer together. Let's bump the volleyball around for a while, Dad. And then those conversations would happen during that time. So she wasn't a face-to-face person. And I think oftentimes it can be frustrating if you're trying to talk to them, but that's not necessarily their best communication style. So there's different ways with each child, I think, to communicate. Okay, now to kind of shift a little bit, one of the campaigns that we started last spring is with marijuana retailers. And it's called Secure Your Cannabis. And what happened with this project was we collaborated with the cannabis retailers in Clackamas County, but we got these cards from a coalition in Clark County, Vancouver. And I just think it's really interesting that this was a joint effort between prevention coalitions and cannabis retailers. And 2 of the 4 cards talk about the influence that parents have with their children. And to me, that was really striking. And I think send a message that parents really are important. And so these cards will be at cannabis retail establishments throughout the county. But this one is, hey, you're their heroes. And it's just, I just love this picture of them standing there with, you've got the silhouette with the capes behind there. So parents, truly, you are so important to the life of your children. And I know during adolescence, sometimes it gets hard because they're changing, there's brain development going on, a lot of things happening, and they don't necessarily come across as wanting to hear what you have to say. But again, yeah.
Thank you so much for emphasizing that. Are you able to also adjust the slides to stay with what you're sharing?
Yeah. I think this is, can you still see the influence slide?
We only see, we see the title slide.
Oh, okay. Can you see now? What do you see?
We still see the title slide. Maybe it would help if you unshare and then reshare your screen.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for your presence and listening. And Brian, that's really powerful, talking about talking with all of our students. And we saw in the Q&A that these conversations that he's referencing, what we're really grateful for about Brian's presentation today is it's actually for students pre-K through high school. So he's going to be talking about different ways to communicate with your child or students in your life at all ages.
All right, I'm going to try again. Can you see that now? Just
it's showing us your physical slide, but it's not showing us the presentation part. So in this moment, it might just be better, instead of making your slides full screen, even just to go back
okay,
and
go
just
down
click on it like that. Yep.
Okay, can you see that there?
That's great. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so this is the one I just went through about connecting on their, focusing on their strengths, building trust and openness, making time for them, being honest about past experiences, acknowledging peer pressure, and finding out the best way to talk to each child. And then this is the first of the 2 cannabis cards that I have to share. And then this is the second one. Can you see these slides okay? This way? Okay, great. You're their number one. Kids say they're your greatest influence. And again, I think this also sends a message about not just cannabis, but also like they're looking at what we do, whether we're vaping or using alcohol or using other drugs. They're watching us, and that's a key point to remember when we're trying to have these conversations about drugs and alcohol. Okay, the next slide, we're talking about setting boundaries with our youth. So that is, again, part of these conversations are when they're getting ready to go out, say to a friend's house, whether it's after school or overnight, we want to be aware of who they're going to be with, what they're going to be doing, where they're going to be, and when they plan on being home. And that just becomes, once you get in the rhythm of that, that becomes just second nature to ask those questions. And you're not asking them, again, it's just a conversation. You're not asking them in a accusatory way in any way, shape, or form. You're just, hey, I'm just wanting to connect with you before you go. Rules about staying overnight at their friend's house. Again, this is another thing that's very important. Is one of the things is our family had in place was that our girls wouldn't stay overnight at a friend's house unless we had met the parents ahead of time. And so we kind of had an idea who they were. We had their phone number, and we knew how to get a hold of our daughters if something came up. You can only know so much about your friend's parents, but this is a good place just to know and not to assume, oh, you're going to be at so-and-so's house and your child says it's fine, they're good folks or whatever, but you want to also connect with them. Again, after school, again, setting boundaries like where are they allowed to go? I know this is an issue, and that's one of the reasons we try to really promote after school programming wherever we can find funds to do that throughout the county, because that's a high risk time, unsupervised time from the time they get out of school until the time parent caregivers get home from work. And so that's, again, setting plans ahead of time is really important, and making a plan. So one of the programs I'm going to talk about later on is called Strengthening Families. It's for 10 to 14-year-olds and their parents. And a lot of these tools come straight from that program. So is there a plan? If an issue comes up, then it's like, okay, we need to huddle up and we need to have a plan behind where they go. If they were home late, okay, there's a rule that if you're home late, then there's a consequence. And just that they know ahead of time that you're not trying to shoot from the hip and trying to make those changes right there at that moment. And then just talk about what other boundaries you have that you can agree to. Okay, these are the boundaries that we have. And, if they say, oh, I'm going to spend the night at Jake's house, and then we find out his parents aren't going to be there, but Jake's brother will be there and he's 17, so you don't have to worry about us, mom or dad. And then you say, well, sorry, but the rule is that you can't stay overnight at a friend's house without a parent caregiver there. So again, you're preemptive, you're planning ahead with your youth, and you're agreeing to these boundaries ahead of time. Now, at the moment, they probably aren't going to be very happy about it, but at least it's as fair as you can make it. And then when they do go out, say they go out to a party, somebody's birthday party, and the next thing they know, they're feeling there's alcohol there and they're feeling uncomfortable. There's a plan there so that they can text you, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I need to get picked up. Or maybe it's they text you and say there's some sort of code, and you call them and they pick up the phone and say, hey, and then they can just have an out, say, my parents, something's going on at home, I need to get home, and they're going to come pick me up. And so these are all these things about just thinking ahead of time before the actual crisis is in front of you. Identifying signs of substance use or at-risk behavior. These are just pretty basic, but I think it's important. Again, knowing that adolescents, there are changes in behavior during adolescence. Many of the people on the webinar, I'm sure, are quite aware of that. Generally, they need more sleep. And oftentimes they don't go to bed until late, and on the weekends, they'll sleep in till late into the morning or even afternoon. But what we're looking for here is just sudden changes in activities or friend groups. So again, it's back to that beginning where I talked about connecting with your youth on a regular basis. So you're seeing that, okay, there's there's some changes going on here, trying to figure out what that is. Drop in school performance. That's a really clear one where they're normally been really good, and suddenly there's a drop in performance, and there's maybe not any reference to, they haven't really been talking about how much they struggle in that certain classes. There's just suddenly there's a drop. So you want to talk to them about that. Some sort of change in behavior, whether it becomes more aggressive or more withdrawn. Again, start figuring out or trying to figure out what's going on there. And relationships, suddenly it's not going well, and there's just a lot of tension in the house. And so that you might want to just try to figure out, okay, what's going on. Maybe talk to some other parents. And that's the other thing about when you connect with parents where they are hanging out a lot, that's also a good way to make that connection across to people that are dealing with the same type of issues that everybody deals with adolescent behavior. Again, back to peer influence, negative peer influence. You're starting to hear that. You're starting to understand that they're struggling with some peer pressure. And then just lack of pro-social skills. They're not really fitting in, and trying to help them determine where a good solid friend group might be found. All right, then we're just talk about quickly, as you're starting to wonder about all these changes, you also need to be aware that there's so many different products you can buy that aren't really products, where paraphernalia, drugs can be stored. The battery compartment of an alarm clock, Coke cans that aren't really filled with Coke, but you can just open it and put something in there. Teddy bears, baseball hats. Here you got some tennis shoes that the flap opens up, and even video controllers. So there's just different things to be aware of. I'm not trying to create an alarm here, but just to really help you understand that there are things out there that you can just buy, just Google it or get it on Amazon, and you'll see this. Okay, so this is where I think we're going to try to do a quick poll. So when we talk about, one of the things with the Strengthening Families program, we talk about family values and where are we at with our values. Everybody's in different places, whether we grew up in an atmosphere or environment where drugs and alcohol were prevalent, or whether they were not at all. That affects kind of what your values regarding alcohol, marijuana use are. So I don't know. So can you we're going to do a quick poll and see where people are at with that. So again, this is completely anonymous, just trying to get a gauge on where you're at and what you think you would fall on that scale.
Brian, are you able to see the results coming in?
I am.
Okay,
I
wonderful.
can see them, yeah.
We don't know
All right.
who's answering, but we see people answering, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for participating in this. And again, it looks like it's all the way up and down, but it seems like there's kind of even representation around you should never drink, youth should taste beer. Youth can taste beer, wine at home. And youth need to know the value of parent caregivers drinking outside the house. So again, this is back to that Strengthening Families program. This is one of the things that is addressed in 2 of the sessions. So you can kind of get an understanding. And one of the things that we do know around youth drug and alcohol use, that the earlier, we call it age of onset. So the earlier youth begin using, the more likely they're to become alcohol or drug dependent as an adult. And it truly is a dramatic scale. If they start using before the age of 14, we know that there's a 4 times more likely, they're 4 times more likely to become addicted as an adult. And every year past 14, it dramatically decreases. So we understand that today's just youth, my daughters included, don't wait until they're 21 to first try alcohol. But if they wait until they're 19 or 20 versus 13 or 14, that makes an enormous difference in the likelihood that they'll become dependent. So do I end the poll, Mary Kay, or? Thank you so much for participating. That was interesting. Okay, I'm kind of. Are we good? Okay, I can't do anything for some reason. It's just.
I stopped sharing the
Oh, there we
poll.
go.
Does that
Okay,
help?
got it.
Okay.
There we go. Right, so you can see that slide, identifying family values. Oh, now it's back. I don't know.
I took it away again. Hopefully that.
Okay.
Are you able to advance the slide now?
No.
Huh.
Now maybe I can now. There.
There you go. Does they beat the poll?
There we go. Okay.
Get ahead of it.
All right. So this is just what I shared. Onset of youth matters. And again, that's one of the things that we do. We try to really educate youth. We in our classroom presentations, in the programs that we provide, it's really trying to help them understand that waiting is so beneficial, because one of the new programs this last couple of years that we've been using in prevention is called Brain About. So instead of trying to like lecture to the point where like, well, we know these facts, we know about drugs and alcohol, and if they start at early age, but to talk about their brain development and how the brain changes from age like 12 to 20, and then how the brain function is affected by interjecting nicotine, alcohol, or cannabis into the adolescent brain. And it seems like they're very receptive to that. It's very, it's pretty cutting edge information, and they are very interested in how the brain works. And so I think that's kind of a new tack that we're going to be using. We're already using it in West Lynn and in Oregon City in the schools, in their health classes. They're using these Brain About, and they're short little videos. There's like worksheets after the videos. And so that's something that we're hopefully going to actually do this spring at Lake Ridge Middle School. So I'm excited about using these Brain About videos. Again, it's just what resonates with young people. We know that scare tactics don't work. So we're just trying to walk alongside them and educate them. So in the field of prevention, we talk about risk factors and protective factors. And these are a list of some of the protective factors for our teens. Again, no history of alcoholism in the family, that there's firm boundaries and disapproval of the use of drugs in the family. Family members don't drink heavily or use illegal drugs. Bonding to school, that's a really important one. Not only bonding towards just the school in general, but maybe a teacher or a counselor or somebody at school that the student has a really good connected bond with. Their friends, again, back to that idea of the peer pressure. Their friend group, they don't use drugs, tobacco, or alcohol. And the teen can feel comfortable to share thoughts and feelings with at least one family member regarding what they're going through. One of the above that we talked about, peer pressure, different things that they're dealing with. And again, just a few things on what to look for alcohol use. These are just pretty clear. One, alcohol, because there is an odor to it for sure most of the time, but they could hide it in water bottles or soda bottles, like a Coke can or something. Smell, slurred speech, lack of coordination, or nausea, vomiting. And then for marijuana use, it's a little different. One, oftentimes now, if they're using vape pens, there isn't a lot of odor. And so that's one thing that is more challenging. And also with the use of vape pens, it's easier to conceal using the cannabis. But again, what we know is changes in their behavior, slower speech, inappropriate laughter, or they're or being unfazed by like major conflicts or stress. Again, the smell, you could maybe smell it in their car. Paraphernalia in their bedroom, and again, there's places where you can just kind of look for some of those things that were in the other slide around Coke cans or baseball caps or tennis shoes or different things where they can hide it. And excessive sleeping. Now, we talked about the sleeping situation where they tend to sleep longer, especially on the weekends when they don't have to get up. And they don't necessarily, their sleeping becomes deregulated a lot of time during adolescence. But one of those things is for that, if they're excessively sleeping all the time, or they come home from school and go right to bed and sleep, just changes is what we're kind of looking for there. Then we want to talk about, I'm pretty sure most everybody is understand that we have a serious situation here with prescription pills and fentanyl. I think just setting those boundaries, that communicating that no pill is safe unless it's prescribed by a doctor, and even then it needs to be monitored, especially opioids. That prescription pills are intended only for that person. And sharing pills is not only illegal, but so dangerous. And I know there's some parents caregivers, adults out there that they keep their pills because, you know, they didn't use all of them and they're there. If another family member is in pain or something, that they would give them those pills, but it's just as well to dispose of those pills safely and not have them in your medicine cabinet. Also, those lock boxes that I mentioned that we give the cannabis retailers to give out to customers. We also have those available for prescription drugs. They're small little boxes, and if you're interested in getting any of those boxes, you can contact me and I can make sure you get one. And now we've got the problem with fentanyl is we've got these pills that are stamped and look just like a legitimate OxyContin or similar regular prescription pill, but they're stamped and they have fentanyl in them. So you really, unless it comes straight from the pharmacy, it's really no way that they should be using pills that they get from anywhere else. And some of this now we have already talked about, but make it a conversation. Again, part of that adolescence is that impulsivity and risk-taking. It's a normal part of adolescent behavior, but really begin those dialogues early and often around drug and alcohol. And we've got, hopefully, if I can show that a short video that kind of goes through that. Risk of experimentation with pills is definitely more deadly with fentanyl on the scene. It only takes just a small amount of fentanyl to have an overdose. Fear-based messaging, it's not work, it doesn't work, and teens will tune out if they feel like they're being judged. And they want to, we want to empower them to make safe choices. And then finally, if there is an overdose, there is naloxone available, which you can also, you'll have information to all the slides here. We have free naloxone kits available and we can get them out, but it's imperative that you have those if there is an opiate overdose, because they can reverse that immediately. So now we're going to start talking a little bit about some of the resources that we have available, and also a little bit, maybe more if we have time, of the social norms work that we do in the schools. So when we came out of COVID, we worked with a media agency we wanted to do a media campaign around drugs and alcohol. And really what we heard when we talked to the media team and with other youth in the community is mental health took a big spike during COVID. And so we decided we were going to focus on a youth mental health media campaign. So we collaborated with Oregon Lines for Life and their Teen to Teen line. And so we kicked this campaign off last summer, and it ran through the middle of September, but we're continuing to hand out these posters, and we have little magnets that can go on the inside of a school locker. They're those little like refrigerator magnets, and we have plenty of those also available if anybody wants one or wants some. And so really what it is it's just trying to help youth know that they're not alone, and that there's help out there. And this is one of those, they're texting a teen that's been trained. So it is a teen on the other end, but they've been trained to kind of learn how to respond appropriately and supportively, and get, depending on what they're hearing, get that young person the resources that they need to help them move on to a better place where they're working through their feelings of depression or anxiety or just isolation. And so here's the other two. Again, very simple, right to the point. And we have these posters. I think they're in 11 by 14. And we have some that we've given out to Lake Ridge Middle School counselors and social workers to put out. Okay. Now this is where I'm going to try to show this video real quick and not see if I can do this. I'm going to have to stop this share and start another one.
And while you're doing that, Brian, we want to thank you, people in this webinar, for posting your questions. We will have time shortly at the end for you to get those answered by Brian or someone on our CARES team. So please keep them coming.
Let me know if you can't hear this. I might have to do it a second time. Can you hear it? No.
While he's doing that, I'll also say that this recording and these slides will be posted on the district website under LOSD Cares, and I'll be sharing it out in Friday's newsletter, so you'll know exactly where to find it.
Great.
With links to all these resources.
Okay.
When parents talk with their children early and often about the dangers of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, it cuts their likelihood of ever using in half. Afraid to bring it up? Here are quick tips to put your worries at ease. Talk frequently. Talking to your kids about drugs should be a regular part of your weekly routine. Show interest. Show that you take their comments and opinions seriously. Be careful what you say. Be willing to hear your child's viewpoint and allow him or her to express it without criticism. Be careful how you say it. Avoid sounding shocked, angry, or disgusted by comments your child may make. Remember, these conversations are difficult for your child too. Know the facts about drugs and alcohol and tobacco. Experts say informed parents are more successful when they talk with their kids. Be respectful and genuine. If they know their comments will be listened to and valued, kids are more likely to talk about drugs and alcohol on a regular basis. They talk, you listen. Avoid interrupting your child as they talk. And when it's your turn to talk, don't lecture. Scare tactics don't work. Prevention experts advise that scare tactics and overly dramatic statements will not get your child's attention. Control your emotions. Set your emotions aside and listen carefully. Offer facts, experience, and expectations without harsh judgment. Take advantage of teachable moments. Use TV and radio commercials as an opportunity to bring up the topic and get your child's reaction. Feeling a bit more relaxed? Learn more about these 10 tips to help you start talking today by visiting starttalking.ohio.gov.
All right, so that one is kind of 10 quick steps. And again, you'll have access to that. Now let's go back to the slideshow. And there is one more quick video. So Strengthening Families program, like I said, is for 10 to 14 and their parents. And that's something that we could have some conversation with the counseling staff, possibly how we could get that kicked off in Lake Oswego at some point. It's 7 sessions, and it's one night a week for 7 weeks. And then the last one I'll share here is something from Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Or maybe not. No. All right.
Brian, I know we have questions. Oh, there. Never mind.
Great. Let's, I think we're just about to that point here. Okay, so if we have questions, why don't we?
Sure. I'll read out the first couple that came in. One came in early on. I know the specific question is, what ages are we supposed to have the conversations? I know you said early and often. How early? How young?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. What ages are we supposed to have the conversations? In other words, how young should the child be?
Sure. I would say late elementary, start having those conversations. From my experience, I've noticed in late elementary, they tend to be very linear about, oh, I'll never do drugs. Ooh, that's gross. But that's good to kind of start those conversations in. And then again, those transitions to middle school and to high school, I mean, things change. So, but that would be my suggestion.
Brittany, you wanted to chime in?
I would as well, yes. And another thing, Brian and families to know is that in Lake Oswego, our health curriculum addresses drug and alcohol concepts as early as kindergarten. So it talks about safe families and safe choices, and it starts to weave in things about drinking or cigarettes. And so as you get your health newsletter each month from your student's school or teacher, that's a great thing to just peek at if that's the month they're talking about, to make that natural conversation, or when they bring home the health magazine at the end of the month, to just weave that into a car or dinner conversation too, even starting in pre-K and kinder.
I have to echo that as a parent. It helps give you a little bit more meat to the question of, how was school today? Fine. Gives you actually something to talk about. Another question here is, if fear-based messaging doesn't work, how do you say don't do pills? I know the campaign is one pill can kill.
Mhm.
How is that not fear-based, or what's the difference?
Sure. Well, that's the fact is, I mean, some of it is just factual. I think this is, my wife is, we have this kind of inside joke about it really, it's not necessarily what you say, but it's how you say it. And I think the tone of how we have these conversations is so important, that if we're going to give them these facts of what we know, it's common knowledge about fentanyl, these pills, one pill can kill. We're trying to make it part of that conversation, and not coming across really, hard, like, just really aggressive. But again, it's part of that dialogue. So that's reality. And I think the more they know that that's reality, I mean, it's part of, maybe it's something where, hey, I just saw in the news where there was 3 overdoses in Clackamas County from fentanyl. Are you hearing anything about that in school, around the halls, or anything like that? And just, again, that dialogue is so important.
I want to add to that. I was teaching during the time that DARE was a big thing, and some of you might remember that or had gone through that yourself. But that was a big police program that they would come in and talk to 5th graders about drug and alcohol use. And research did show that it wasn't effective because it was more fear-based. And so what they are showing is that their education route of, gosh, do you know what it does to your brain? Do you know how it makes you feel? And I would echo Brian's comment about, gosh, I'm reading about this fentanyl. Have you heard about it from your friends? Or the different, even just asking them different questions about what are the names that kids are using for drugs now? What's the street name? Because honestly, I think if we were to listen to them, we would have no idea sometimes that they're talking about drugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another question here, 2-parter, but if you know your kid is actively using drugs, what's the best approach to confronting them, and what are the next steps a parent should take?
That is a great question. And I think, again, sitting down with them and trying to be as much as I'm sure inside you're just got all kinds of emotions going, trying to be as calm as possible and being direct about, you know, if you know they're using drugs, tell them, you know, I know that you've been using drugs, and share with them how you know, whatever, if you found it or if you, whatever the thing is, and say, you know, I love you. I want you to get help. And then that's where we can move on to, okay, what kind of help, what's the first level of help, or maybe it need to skip the first level depending on the severity of it and get some outpatient into an outpatient program somewhere as soon as you can.
I will add, I'll put a little plug in for our school counselors and social workers, that they are a great start to help getting you connected with resources and going in the right direction. Another question here, should you approach your child about past use as a means of starting the drug conversation, or have them come to you first?
Are we talking about your own past use?
She
As
didn't
an adult?
clarify, but yeah, she didn't say.
Okay, well, that's kind of where I'm going with it. Can you repeat the question real quick?
Yeah. Should you approach your child about past use as a means of starting the drug conversation, or have them come to you first?
Well, I don't know when it started. I can't remember how old my girls were, but I remember I was very transparent about, look, you know, I did use, it affected my grades, it affected my peer group. I felt in a rut, I felt stuck. And at one point, I just realized I had to make a change. This is not the direction I wanted my life to go in. And I had to make a big change for my peer groups and change direction, really change course. So I would, that's how I would do it, but it's depends on, I don't know what the counselors think.
Well, one of my takeaways from your presentation is that you do want to have the conversation often and find opportunities to bring it up. So you not necessarily go directly to a child and say, I know you used in the past, but just set the table to talk about drugs and alcohol. And if they come forward and say something about their own experimentation, that's different. But regardless, you want, what I'm taking away from you, Brian, is you want to make that a conversation that is normal to be had in your house and with your family.
Agreed.
Yeah, you want to open that door. I too have 3 daughters who have, they're all out of high school and college age. And I would absolutely agree. Your child may not open up to you that moment in time, but as long as you have that door open to say, hey, anytime, this is really, really important. And you are really important to me. So I absolutely agree. Anytime is a good time, and have that door always open, and your child will, even if it's just general questions, and they might first ask you about your use. And I would agree with Brian too, just kind of being transparent about that.
And building on that, thinking from that younger lens too, maybe it's talking about that peer pressure, like Brian mentioned earlier. Gosh, I struggle with peer pressure sometimes when I was in 5th grade, you know, things like that, to get those conversations and that language started when they're younger. So then when you bring up those conversations about harder and more challenging things, that they have already connected with you and felt safe with you on that.
We have another question here. Yeah, I'm not muted. I have received recent questions, concerns around inhalants, huffing in younger grade school students. Is this being discussed in the county? Is this addressed in the LOSD health curriculum?
It's definitely on our radar. It kind of comes in waves with that kind of bubbling up. Right now, you know, the thing that is really kind of on the forefront of our mind is vaping. But again, those you can get those off at a home improvement store or a grocery store. You can get the what is it? The whipping cream, in the can. And so I think that's one of the things where definitely look at those signs back to drug use. I mean, because some of those overlap with, say the marijuana or alcohol use is like something's off here. But so I think right now we're to actually, it is on our radar, but it's not something that we always address when we're doing presentations in the schools.
And then last question we have in here is what was the 7-week class 1 day a week? And I believe you called it Strengthening Families. And Brian, you mentioned bringing it to Lake Oswego, but
yeah,
are people in Lake Oswego able to sign up for it in another county or another town? Or do we need to wait for it to
they
come
could
here?
right now. We're doing it right now in Sandy, and
Okay.
we're on session 3 tonight. So I think that would be a conversation with the panelist here to talk about, how can we make that happen? And again, try to gauge if there's enough interest so generally we're looking at trying to recruit 8 to 12 families. It's a great program. I could talk a whole hour just on that. It was something I did up in Washington for a good 7-8 years, coordinating and being a facilitator.
Another question came in. What are your thoughts on notifying friends' parents on drug use if you know their kids are using?
I think, again, depending on, just very calmly, yes, absolutely. Again, we want to get the proverbial cat out of the bag, so to speak. Again, it's just this is what's happening. I know growing up, our kids called us the Amish parents a lot, as we wouldn't necessarily let them do all the things they wanted to do, and it wasn't popular, I'm telling you, because they really thought it was unfair. But I think if you feel led to do it, I think I would definitely encourage that. Yes.
I know as a parent, what I always tell myself when having those hard conversations is that if it was my child, I would want to know. So I try and put myself in that other person's shoes. One last question that came in, and that is, I'd be curious to know what you would say if a student is worried about losing their friends if they stop using. Can kids maintain friendships with others that are still using if they choose not to?
Wow, that's a great question, honestly. Really tough one too. I would say it's possible, but not necessarily likely, because that tends to be with the friends they're using, that tends to be kind of a central focus of what their life's about, is the using the drugs. And so I think you're going to have to make a change and find some different friend groups.
Well, wonderful.
I'll share my last slide here if I can.
Yes, please.
So there's a training coming up, and again, the slide deck will be available, and then that's my contact information and our website. We also do early learning programs for 0 to 8-year-olds and preschool promise, and then all the services we do, teen prevention work and domestic violence prevention as well. And there's my family. Okay.
It's a beautiful family.
Thanks.
I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us today. Wonderful participation. I know we'll have many more that are planning to watch the recording. which we'll have posted on the website and shared out. I don't know if Brittany or the counselors have any last thing you want to share before we close out today.
Once again, we are so grateful. We're grateful for our leadership from Dr. Sanders and Mary Kay, all of your partnership. And Brian, thank you for bringing such an important topic to our families and our schools. And we look forward to continue partnering with Clackamas County. And please stay tuned for our spring session from LOSD Cares. And we reach out to your counselors and social workers at your student school for any support as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Brian, for coming.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Go out and enjoy some of the sunshine we're getting right now. Bye.